Hey, Mark here. David and we got way too into talking about Son-in-Law, and we forgot to plug his podcast, the Award Wieners Movie Review Podcast. It's a lot of fun. You'll love it. Basically, they talk about a movie that won a Best Picture Academy Award, and they combine it with an Oscar Mayer hot dog recipe that you can, so basically you can listen to the podcast, go watch the movie, and make yourself a delicious hot dog that you can eat while you're watching a movie that has won a Best Picture Academy Award. It's a lot of fun. You'll love it. David is a frequent contributor to the MFF podcast, and I totally think you should check out his podcast. It's the Award Wieners Movie Review Podcast. Thanks. Enjoy Son-in-Law. Welcome to Movies, Films, and Flick. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who is currently wearing Steven Tyler PJs. It's David Cross.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, you munching on some grindage?
Totally.
Oh, man. So, macking on them nugs?
Macking on them nugs. Yeah. That still works today, you know. I walk down the street and I'm like, hey, Nug, what's up? But she just keeps walking. I don't think she gets it.
Hey, I have a quick question for you. There's a scene at the end where Grandpa Walter calls Travis a scumbag. How many A's do you think he got out of that scumbag?
I think 5 A's.
5 A's?
Let me see if I can do it, actually.
Yeah.
Scumbag.
Yeah,
maybe
there
4,
it is.
actually. Maybe 4.
I was thinking like 38.
Ugh, it's a weird pronunciation. Like even in the movie, I was like, this doesn't feel like dude speak. What's going on?
Well, Grandpa Walter, though, he busted out. He said scumbag very uniquely in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a very unique dynamic between Walter Sr. and the Walter Jr. It's interesting how the kids are out of control, and then the grandpa says your kid's out of control, but then the dad's like, no, they're not out of control. I got this.
But they're out of control. They are.
There's a very interesting father-son dynamic in this film.
Yeah. I guess that's the subtext of the entire thing is that everyone's dealing with the traumas of their family.
Yeah.
I can't go anywhere for Thanksgiving because my mom is on her 4th marriage and she didn't treat me well when we were kids and I grew up in the casino.
Yeah, so we talked about Encino Man on the podcast, I mean, way back in the day, maybe even before the 200s. And in that movie, Weasel was always at Sean Astin's home because he couldn't go home. He's like, yeah, my mom is super bummed. So he had no food at his house. So it seemed like a theme in Pauly Shore movies where he has bad parent.
I'm gonna have to agree with you on that. And the caveat is like I can only remember like 3 of his movies.
Encino Man is good. So in that podcast, Jay Cluett and we talked about the engineering brilliance of Sean Astin and Pauly Shore because they got a 1,000-pound ice block out of a swimming pool hole using only a swing set, a modified rope. They somehow got a rider lawnmower into a hole. Then they dragged this 1,000-pound ice block out of a hole and then built some sort of device to get it into their garage and up on Sawhorse.
If anyone can do it, I believe it's Brendan Fraser and no, not Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, he was so frozen.
Yeah, the guy that you said, Sean Astin.
I mean, but Pauly Shore's attitude in Encino Man was really, he was just super, he had a horrible home life, but he was very certain of himself, and I like that. He was a very warm kind of character, even when he was drinking Slurpees and, teaching Link about the food groups, which is a pretty funny moment. But in Son-in-Law, the older I get, the less I like Crawl.
So I'm really glad you brought this up because I agree. I remember loving this movie as a young kid. I'm talking maybe 10 or younger. And I still think there are parts of this movie that are a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
But the Weasel as a character is kind of obnoxious.
He's not? Okay. So I kind of forgive him for his fish out of water antics because my family, they have a farm in northwest Iowa, large farm, and you see sometimes like city folk go out there and they really act like it's a novelty. Like, hey, let's go slap some hogs. Let's put on some overalls. Let's let's say yeehaw. But Iowa and South Dakota are not exactly the country. They're not, thank God I'm a country boy territory. Like, they're not, it's not like this, you know what I mean? It's not like, but in this, Pauly Shore's like, you're inbred. But incredibly rich farmers in South Dakota are not inbred.
Yeah. That's kind of the line that sticks out to me, is that he asked if two different people were inbred. And at the beginning, he's like kind of being weird to Becca.
Yeah.
But then he just says it to those random people when he's in the town. And I'm like, what a dick. Like, you don't just like walk up to someone and be like, you inbred? Like,
now, can we chalk that, can we forgive him because he's a 25-year-old? Well, no, he's about 25 years old. He's from LA. He's unparented. He probably acts out for attention because he never got any from his mother. But when
yes.
So I don't think he means it maliciously. He just means it ignorantly. But it's still not something you say to complete strangers who are elders.
Yeah. I don't think he has a filter. He's just constantly saying whatever he's thinking and not thinking about how that affects other people.
He had me when he started talking about Beck, when he called her prime USDA choice, but then he added teriyaki onto it. And that lost me.
So let's just do this now, actually. So Pauly Shore's character, the Weasel, talks in dude speak, and dude speak, from what I understand, is him just making shit up.
Yeah, so he's just out there. He's wheeling and dealing. He's freestyling.
Yeah, because I read a interview with him from 1991 in some tiny newspaper, and he literally just said, he's like, I make all this stuff up. This isn't like I have a dictionary. I just start talking and weird things come out.
Like Wheeze the Juice, and then that became
Wheeze the Juice.
I mean, that's okay. In our lexicon, Wheeze the Juice is a thing, and so is grindage, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So he willed those into existence, would you say?
I do. And I think people don't realize how popular he was from like the late 80s to the mid 90s.
So with inflation, right? Son-in-law with inflated domestic totals made $64 million, $36 million in 93. $64 million. I mean, that's more than Dr. Sleep. That's more than Charlie's Angels. That's more than a film that gets released. And this wasn't released in over 3,000 theaters. This didn't see the massive release that movies do now. So Pauly Shore in 93 was a bona fide star.
Oh, yeah. He was a star up until mid 90s, when I think people realized all his movies were getting like 21s and 20% in Rotten Tomatoes. Not that Rotten Tomatoes existed, and it's another way of saying they weren't actually that great unless you were a little kid.
Now, I went and watched In the Army Now, and I haven't watched that movie in years, but I in my head, if someone had to say, do you think it's funny, I would say yes, because I love David Allen Greer doing the scorpion on his back bit. I love the suck on this a one time, and he shoots the rocket launcher backwards. It's, yeah, I mean, you just put him in silly situations. You put him on jury duty, like Ernest, and Ernest goes to jail. You put him in the army, like Ernest in the army, and Pauly Shore, whatever, son-in-law. I mean,
yeah, he's a character like Ernest. He's the Weasel who does whatever. His name may be something else, but it's actually the Weasel.
And there's something interesting with the Weasel's world that I would like to explore with you. Link from Encino Man appears in the Army Now and Son-in-Law, and he comes across Pauly Shore. But the thing is, Pauly Shore isn't, so it's not the Weasel, right? And he's not Crawl. Crawl and the Weasel aren't the same person, right? Because he has been there for 6 years. So that would eclipse Encino Man's timeline. So Brendan Fraser, does he move away? And is he confused by these clones? Is it a Pauly Shore clone?
So what I'm thinking is that the Weasel was it actually triplets?
Oh.
These are all Weasel's brothers, and these are all movies in the Pauly Shore universe following the Weasel family.
I mean, they're connected.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, Weasels are low to the ground. Crawl, I would assume you're on the ground. I forget his name in the Army Now. But Link, what is Link thinking?
He's probably not thinking too much.
And how does Link get into the army?
He's strong?
Well,
he's a caveman strong.
Now, did he get paperwork? Like, what's the process of, so Link would have had to have gone through school all over again to get into college. Oh, you were unfrozen, became a senior, and now you're in college in Los Angeles.
He could have been part of the ROTC.
And then, 2 years later, He's in Iraq. What? How did they fudge documents for him?
Yeah. Or I mean, or let's be honest, they're like, you're a big strapping dude who wants to join the army. Let's just get it over with.
Yeah, I guess he just grunts and signs.
They don't look at it too hard. They're like, you want to join the army? Okay.
But how do you get into college without the proper transcripts?
Well, we don't know if he was in college or just there to party.
Oh.
Yeah. He might have just been visiting someone.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. You got it. I like that one.
But if he was in college, what would Link major in?
History.
History? Archaeology?
Yeah, he would know a lot about the caveman times.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. I think this fits in here.
Yeah.
What is Pauly Shore's best movie? And I'm going to run down the four that I think are his main ones, and you can agree or disagree with me on this. And that's Son-in-Law, In the Army Now, Jury Duty, and Biodome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Those are all like his starring vehicles.
Take out Jury Duty and Biodome.
Okay.
And then it's okay. In the Army. Oh, man. All right. So but see, I haven't seen In the Army Now. That's why I'm leaning towards that. Does that make sense?
So you haven't seen Biodome?
I have not watched In the Army Now in a very long time. So that's why I think it's better than Son-in-Law, because I just watched Son-in-Law. However, Son-in-Law tells a cohesive story. There's an ABC structure to this film, and it's done in 90 minutes. So you know what, man? I'm going In the Army Now. Bigger budget. This was a hit. I'm In the Army Now. What do you think?
I think that's good. I think of those four movies, Biodome is the most well known.
Yeah, because all right, so that was before the flop of Jury Duty, correct? Or was it after Jury Duty's flop?
I think it was after Jury Duty.
Okay, so Encino Man had a decent budget. Son-in-Law had a decent budget. In the Army Now had a bigger budget. I can assume that Biodome had a much larger budget. So yeah, I mean, I think Biodome is just the most recent. Tenacious D have a cameo.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they just loved Pauly Shore on Jury Duty. Pauly Shore in a bubble. Pauly Shore in the country. Pauly Shore in the army.
So I have a curveball question. So here's what I think of his actual best movies. Either a Goofy movie or Encino Man. And so we have to pick one of those.
Oh, I mean, he doesn't have much of a part in Goofy, so I'm going to give him... I think Encino Man... I don't really like Sean Astin's character in Encino Man because he's a butt. But I do think Brendan Fraser's very good. I think there's star potential in Pauly Shore in Encino Man. There are dimensions to him. He is very likable in that movie. So I'm gonna give it to Encino Man.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, listen though, like Pauly Shore, he had some charisma. People liked him a lot, and he does have a natural presence on screen for not being an actor. I just think his shtick, much like, Chevy Chase, who had more hits, of course, he just started relying too much on his shtick, not an actual character.
Yeah, it was again, the Weasel does X, the Weasel does Y, and he wasn't as likable, actually.
Yeah, it's just, I remember him being more likable in the Army Now. In this one, between the inbreds, and there's a scene where, listen, it's the 90s, he's 25, but he walks up to her and he goes, what does he say to her? I got it. He's like, undiscovered territory. And he's like, you're inbred? Then he calls her prime USDA choice teriyaki. And I'm kind of
fresh meat.
Yeah, I was like, kind of get away from her, man. And
yeah.
Everyone kept calling her a hick. During the Halloween party, they said to her, hey, what are you, like a hick doing laundry? I'm like, Carla Gugino is an immortal. She does not age. She didn't look like a hick. Did she?
No, not at all. So I had that same problem with this film, thinking about how it really stereotyped farmers. And I started thinking about it. It also super stereotyped people from California. And as someone who lived in California for a while, it's really not totally like that. You have regular people there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Holly weird.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's basically a caricature in this film. You have the saucy brother.
The saucy, horny brother who's doing really inappropriate stuff.
Saucy, horny brother he's good though, that kid. I like him a lot, Zach, that actor, kid from Sandlot. He does a good job in that, Patrick Renna. Then you have the dad who's kind of, you know what though, like her dad's not that bad. He pays for her to go to a cross-country school. She comes home with a fiance named Crud. Like, he's not that bad. Like, she seems very well adjusted, the daughter. And the mom, I like the mom in this. She seems very accepting. And there's a part which annoyed me. When Pauly Shore faked proposed to Carla because she didn't want to get married to Travis, which is weird that he proposed. But then the mom's like, listen, you don't know this guy, and you just brought him home. He's weird. And then Carla Gugino, or I'm sorry, Rebecca,